Welcome, everybody. Again, welcome back. Hopefully you all didn't dream about Parcel Fabric last night. Hopefully you forgot some of it, not all of it, but some of it. Yeah, welcome back. It was pretty dense yesterday what I had shared with you, and hopefully we'll find that some of it actually percolated in. So before we start, let me just go and sort of preface this and sort of the warning that, in fact, I have received a notice from Comcast, who is my ISP provider and internet provider, that, in fact, they were experiencing some issues here in my neighborhood. And they had a tech that was working on it. He said they were going to have it fixed by 8:10 your time. It seems to be up and running. I actually seem to have really my normal type of speed on here, so I'm keeping my fingers crossed that, in fact, it will stay stable now. But it was going up and down for a while up until this point. So just if we want to ensure that, well, let's put it this way. It's going to record everything up until and if my internet goes out, then our recording will stop for a while. But if I suddenly drop off here, or if I freeze, just know that's what happened, and I will get back on as soon as possible. And I will send out an email from my phone just to let you know the situation here. All right. With that, today is going to also be another big day. So let's start with homework. All right. And I have to confess, I didn't write down who actually had already gotten buys and didn't have to do this. So let's go ahead and volunteer and let us know. So Brian wants to volunteer and start. Go ahead, Brian.
I'll go first. So I have
two
things. Okay, so I have two things, and one of them then sparked a question too. So the first thing I learned yesterday, and this is a habit of mine, whether good or bad, when you use the topology, when you use the fix under topology, which I have a habit of doing, finding a problem and just right clicking and using fix, it doesn't assign it to the current record if you're working in a record. And so I need to keep that in mind, that you said if you go in and topology finds an error and you just right click and take the provided fix, it's not necessarily going to assign it to the record. The other thing that I think, and this one sort of then sparked a question I'll get to, was the records. I always thought, coming into Parcel Fabric, I thought the records were sort of this magical, they're just another shape file, or another polygon layer, I mean. And so my question was, can those be exported then as a shape file or
You kind of broke up there. Hopefully it's your end and not my end. I don't wish that on anybody, but let me just verify. Christy, can you still hear me? Okay. So Brian, yes, you are correct. The records feature class is nothing more than a normal type of feature class. If it's being served out, it's a feature service, but in fact, it is just normal. Where is it now? Record has, here it is here. Here, this is a normal feature class. And the only thing that makes it special is the fact that there's that relationship class.
Frank?
Yes.
So I just dropped out. I just lost my internet or something. And
I am so sorry.
So I don't know what happened. So I just got back in. So I missed what you were saying.
Okay, let me repeat it because it wasn't that much. I was actually searching for you. In fact, you are correct. The records feature class, that part of the Parcel Fabric, is a simple feature class. The only thing that makes it special is the fact that it does have an association with these individuals in here, and it participates in the Parcel Fabric. So it normally, again, if I go here to this, I can go and export this out. I can do anything I want with it. It's just a simple feature class. And that's sort of one of the things I want to bring to the table here, is that This is not magical. This is just computer science. That's all it is computer science. And they're building relationships together, and they're making sure that there's additional code that's being fired off. That's going on. But those are really good things. The first one is important. The topology fixes that you have, the standard topology fixes, they are not, at least in the latest versions of the software, they are not parcel fabric aware, and they are not tracked with the parcel fabric. So when you delete a record when you delete a feature that doesn't comply with topology rules, that's fine. It's when you add a feature, that's when you have to be aware of the issue. And it's going to add it, and it will then comply with topology, but it will not comply with an attribute rule that says that these features have to have records associated with it. So while you're fixing one thing, you're not totally fixing the problem. So yeah, you really won't know it's a problem until you actually run validate of the attribute rules. But again, it helps you at least with the topology component of it. So I wouldn't say you don't have to run topology, but just recognize there's some nuances in there, some little things you have to be aware of. Okay. Good ones. All right. Who wants to go next?
I'll go
Christy. Oh, Christy raised her hand.
next. All right.
Sorry. Go ahead, Christy.
Okay. One that I really appreciated was learning that with traversing for the curve, the difference between the long curve and the short curve for accuracy, what to put in. I found that, nice to know. I also really found it interesting how the copy lines 2 tool works. The fact that if you use it, it automatically retires the original parent, and you can choose whether or not you keep the attributes. I thought that was a pretty cool thing.
Yes. So just a couple things, just sort of to build on that a little bit. When you use the copy lines 2, it only marks your existing parcel historic if you choose to copy them to the same layer. If you copy them to a different layer, no, it keeps it as it is. So that's fine on there. And the other one you had was the Traverse tool, correct? Yeah. Good points. Good points. So Jesse, go ahead. We'll go with you, and then we'll go with Tammy. Go ahead,
Okay.
Jesse.
As Violet said, I'm very new to ARC. So this is all kind of overwhelming a little bit, but it's a simple thing. But when you rotated that feature yesterday, how you could drag the rotation point to the end of the line, we did not realize that yet. So that's very helpful. And then on the
That's using the control key.
right, the control key, and then in being able to do a ground to grid in your traverse, instead of, so you're rotating it during the traverse rather than rotating it after the fact. That was helpful.
Yes. Yes. So one more thing with the rotate tool. All right. Usually I have a separate thing on this, but so with the rotate tool and with any of these, the move and the scale tools, it automatically goes and creates an anchor for you that's at the centroid of your selected features. So if I have multiple features selected, it takes the overall envelope and puts an anchor at that center point. So by the way, a quick hint, if I have more than one thing selected, so if I were to go in here and also select this thing and then do a rotate, you can see it's not on the one I thought it was on. So that's a quick hint that maybe you have more than one thing selected on here. You want to make sure that let's go in and select that here. There, let's just have that one selected and do that. That's the first thing. It's going to put something up in the center of your selected features. If you want to go and move it, sorry, I'm on a virtual machine that's got a very small here. So if I go and hold down the control key and put it there, There's another hidden element in here. That's the selection anchor. It anchors the selection, but there's a second one in here. If I go to, and I move my cursor over, for example, it's at the end here, and I click on the S key, I actually get a second anchor. That's called the snap anchor. All right. And what that does is wherever that anchor is located, if I move it around, it's going to take that and actually snap that to adjacent things. So I can actually move a line, make it on top of another line, then I can do the rotate, and I can rotate it around so it is contiguous with that. If you're new to Pro, that's, that sort of is hidden and you really don't know that. That actually works the same way it was inside of ORMAP. There's two anchors with the rotate. There's the selection anchor, and then there's a snap anchor in there. And your second one was, I'm sorry about it, but can you repeat that?
Being able to apply a ground to grid.
Oh, yeah.
Ground to grid.
Yeah, ground to grid is an underappreciated and many times misunderstood component on it. And for a cadastralist and for a parcel mapper, you want to understand. And again, I'm a surveyor, so I need to preface it that I strongly suggest to always go and use ground to grid if you can. Yeah, good. Tammy, why don't you go ahead now?
Yay, okay. So what I learned was something you said related to the record. You mentioned yesterday that we could add more attribute fields to the record. And that really, I can imagine that's going to help us here at DOR because I can think of deed numbers, adding a field for that. Also, we track our map changes with the ID number. So that also would be very helpful. And of course, you mentioned the hyperlinks.
Right.
That as well. So that really will make the record so much more useful, so much more beneficial to us.
So here's an interesting thing on that. And I want to, sorry to interrupt you, but right now, when we first get started, most of us think of records. This is our parcel, right? Whatever it was. And the record's over on the side. And here's the record information on here. But the reality is, once you understand the power of the record, you then understand that, oh, my record comes before anything else that's associated with it. All right. And that the record really is the organizing component. And if I have attributes that goes with several different types of parcels, I really want to put it into my record, not into the individual parcels or the tax lot or whatever it is. You really want to think about how you're organizing things and the fact that the record may actually be the primary organizing feature that you use and not tax lots or anything else in there. Good. Sorry. Good point.
Frank, can I just, I know Tammy's talking right now, but it's a follow-up on what she's saying since we work together about customizing the records feature class and adding fields. This is a great thing, and everything Tammy just said is totally right. To be more specific, though, there's two interesting things that I would like to look at customizing the records table. We have essentially our workflow involves like we have a maintenance application where every maintenance item is essentially a record. We can do that, back and forth. So when I look at our maintenance data model, one of the key things we're doing is we're tracking time against the maintenance. And now this is just not a single field where you say, oh, hours spent on record, right? It is actually, we entered by date. So, or sometimes you might work on the same item 2 different times during the day. So essentially, I'm looking at doing a relationship class or some equivalent to create a one-to-many in terms of hours time records against the records table. So you might have the records table as the one, and then related to the many being many time entries for a particular record. I wonder if you've seen that before, or whether you think that that is a doable thing. And then the second thing is we get official record documentation comes in with the maintenance request, right? So
Right.
it's going to be a plat, it's going to be a survey, it's going to be something that contains official signed off by the county clerk type documentation. We're all familiar with that. I'd like to look at maybe the ideas, can we have blob fields and embed those documents inside of the record? And again, that would be kind of a one-to-many situation in a relationship class. What do you think about that?
Okay, a couple things. First of all, the relationship class between the records and your timekeeping application, whatever it is. In fact, all of the existing relationships between the record feature class and these other related feature classes are one-to-many relationships. They are, yes, you can definitely do one-to-many relationship in here. You go and establish the attribute, and then go ahead and build a relationship over there. You just want to be aware of one simple thing, that in fact, different from normal feature classes within the parcel fabric, because it can be served out as services and not just feature classes, you want to make the primary keys the global IDs and not the object IDs. All right.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay.
I can imagine creating, instead of doing another .NET application, which is what we currently have that built on, actually having a web, website,
Yes.
where our application is now served out through a browser.
Yes. So the other thing in that you actually can go, and rather than putting a blob in there, you can make, again, this is a simple feature class. You can go and make attachments available to that feature class. So it can serve as attachments, which are stored in either the geodatabase or stored in the service for you. So that's how you can go and have different documents that are included inside of there, if you don't want to use some sort of a content management system. Yeah.
Yeah. So enterprise supports document management to some extent, are you saying?
Well, it supports attachments with web services. So yeah.
I'll do a web search on that. Thanks so much.
Yeah,
And sorry
so-
to interrupt you, Tammy. It just was it was part of the same topic that you were just talking about.
So not to go too far
Yeah,
into
this is Tammy. No problem. Thank you, Tom. Appreciate it.
recognize that the web services, all right, the web services are going to come off of Portal here, but the data is actually still stored on your enterprise geodatabase as a data store. And it's in this component that you'll have the attachments available to you. All right. So they will get stored in the enterprise, but that feature class / feature service will have attachments associated with them.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Tammy, did you give me 2? Was that 1?
No, I'm good. Do I need to give you 2? I
Yeah,
only have the 1.
Violet says no. She says, okay, you do this. So, all right. So now that
Yeah, I
Violet did
actually
that,
have quite a list if you want me to go through it.
well, Violet says the more you do, the less she has available to her. So Violet, why don't you come up now and give us 2?
Well, theoretically, I'm exempt.
Yeah. Okay.
But I can always get some. I learned about how to do arcs in the Traverse tool.
Perfect.
Understanding how to do shortcuts with arc length, whether it's with chord, arc length, or delta. I didn't know that before. I'll also pull another thing from the same tool. The asterisk actually means tangent. I didn't know that before. I was sort of like a little clueless, like what the asterisk meant. Like, oh, it's just carrying value over. No, it actually means tangent. So that's
Yeah.
cool.
Good. All right, so where are we now? Who's next? Got a lot of people in the back there that are quiet.
I can go next.
Okay, go ahead, Ted.
So I was very happy to see that the not a part of record topology rule is now moved from topology and got moved into something else, because when we were trying to do this in 2.6, it was really terrible trying to do topology checks because everything was an error and you'd had to wade through a million things. And so, like, I think it was Dean had mentioned, part of our workflow is if we were working in an area, we'd have to create a substitute, a placeholder record, assign everything to the record so we wouldn't have all those errors. So that's very nice that it's not there anymore. We don't have to do that anymore.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I was not the favorite around Esri's dev team for a while, but yeah, good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing is about Jesse's comment about the anchor points, moving the anchor points. I also do that when I'm, so we actually usually create a lot of our line work and stuff in scratch layers. So when I'm moving stuff, I also move that anchor point to the point that I really want to move and snap to a specific spot, because that's pretty much the only reliable way of doing it, much like it was kind of in ArcMap.
Yep. Yeah. And they've been in there a while. They're just not well documented in there. Yeah. Yeah. Good. Good. Well, who's not exempt on here? Ivan, we haven't heard from you. Are you available? Did you learn anything?
Yes, I learned quite a few things. I took some notes and whatnot. I'm just kind of getting into the cogoing of the tax lot lines. And,
Okay.
I'm just real interested into that because of having to switch the conversion of our database, where a lot of the property lines are, some are cogoed in and some aren't. So just kind of looking into that.
So you may not have realized this, but you just said something that is really important for the difference, is that the parcel fabric, within the parcel fabric, you do not need COGO in order for you to build a parcel. All right. And there's no rule that says a line has to have COGO. That's different from the old ArcMap parcel fabric, and that every line had to have COGO. No, you can actually build lines, and you will see me building lines, or you see me building parcels without lines, without COGO lines. There'll be lines, but they won't have COGO on them. So yeah, it's important to recognize, especially you'll have some types of descriptions that do not have COGO associated with them, and that's completely acceptable within the parcel fabric and Pro. Yeah, good thing.
Excellent.
And
Yeah,
what
and,
else? What else?
As far as the second, just getting into the records too was, the historic of what we have versus going into all parcel fabric. So nothing really on that.
Good. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Who else do we have? Ted, Viola. Donna, I think you were exempt, right?
Yeah, I think I can go.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, this is Jeff. Yeah, so interesting discussion about relating the records to other documents. I mean, I hadn't really considered that. So that's a great discussion, I think, because I'm curious about how to organize the records as well. And but yeah, I hadn't really considered the relationships maybe with the records table. So that was really interesting. And then what we were just talking about, the COGO. So but if you do like a least squares adjustment to try to adjust your parcels, do you need COGO on the lines?
So a least squares adjustment is going to go, and if you have COGO associated with them, it will utilize that COGO as part of the analysis. This is a very touchy point for me. Again, I'm a surveyor. So as a surveyor, I actually, again, used to teach least squares adjustment. Least squares adjustment goes and looks at a network analysis of values, observations, COGO values on here. So, and that's the reason why if you have COGO stored, and especially if you have COGO that has things such as ground to grid or any sort of rotation or scaling on there, it takes those into account and weights them. But if you have lines that do not have COGO on them, it does not include them within the analysis. It does not go and prevent an analysis from being done. But if you don't have values in there, it just doesn't include that as part of the overall analysis on there. Yeah.
Yeah, very, very good to know. And,
Okay.
And you said use the global ID for your primary key and not your object ID.
Yes, not the object ID. The object ID becomes less important as you move into Pro, and especially as you move into feature services when you're serving this out on Portal. All right, in that the global ID isn't even used on Portal, or excuse me, the object ID is not even used on Portal, but global ID is a required attribute, and that's the one that gets tracked because that is so unique on there. All right.
And just to follow up, I mean, I don't want to hog all the time here, but yeah, what if the COGO information is in your annotation, not necessarily associated with the attribute of the line?
If the COGO attribute, or if the COGO attribution is included in ANO, and not actually stored on the line, the least squares adjustment doesn't even look at it. It only looks at the information that's stored on those lines. Christy is shaking her head up and down. I love that, Christy. You recognize it, right? The lines, it is literally just looking at the attribution of the lines. It doesn't look at polygons, doesn't. The only time it looks at points is whether or not they're control points and whether they're meant to go and store them. So yeah, the annotation, it doesn't look at that at all.
Yeah, and because I was interested if there were any tools out there available to maybe pull that. I mean, it's a little, I guess, wishy, but to pull the ANO or pull the ANO COGO information on and create the attribute on the line.
There are tools. You will not like them because there are no batch tools. It's individual. You literally, basically what you're going to do is there's a tool called, let's get here. There's a tool called transfer attributes. All right. Transfer attributes tool. What you do is you first set up the field mapping and you tell it, oh, I'm going to take from my ANO. I don't have any ANO on here. Going to take from the ANO, or excuse me, my target is the line feature class. All right. And my source is my ANO. And I'm going to take this field from my ANO and put it over in this field on my lines. Once I set up the field mapping here, then all I do is I go to transfer attributes. I click on the ANO. And then I click on the line, one by one, by one, by one. I have, believe me, for years, I have been trying to go and find a way to batch this, including things like doing, spatial analysis and spatial joins and finding what's near. And the problem is the annotation is it does not follow any standard basic rules. So you can have a piece of annotation which is sort of in the corner, and you try to find what the line is that's nearest, and it may go to the wrong line. So personally, and I know I am in fact speaking to a group of cartographers, I hate annotation. I hate annotation. I am known as the person who says that annotation is dumb, stupid text, and you shouldn't use it. All right. I'm a data guy. I'm not a cartographer anymore. I'm a data guy. So you put that information on the line, and then you use labeling, or if you do use anno, make sure it's feature linked, but that the information is still on the line, not only on the anno. So I'll get off of my soapbox here. Yeah. So
Right. Can I just ask, since you're proselytizing about moving to labels versus anno, what do you suggest for consultant or clients of yours that have millions of anno? Like, I don't see any way. I mean, I 100% agree with you. My background is in data as well, but I see no way out of this unless we hire 20 staff to spend a year
let me
manually
see
doing this. Like, what's the way out?
So I wish that I had this here. All I have is zip files. I don't have anything that's in here. Oh, there it is here.
I'm going to
So
speak up from a cartographer's side on annotation. I know it's a pain. We always hear that. But on my deed processors and any of the public, when we print book maps or anything like that, they
printing,
need to
yes.
see the annotation. And also labels don't always represent what we need to annotate. We have historic annotation that has nothing to do with the line represented on the map. So our annotation does more than just what the label would do at this point in time. And that's just a comment on my side. I know it's a two-sided fence, I guess.
Yes. So definitely, most definitely. So let's look at this. This is in fact, these are labels. But what we have done is we have taken, and let's go and display some of these other things in here. These are actually points on here where, as part of this migration for this one county, and we've done this with over half a dozen counties now, we take the anno. So let's start with this. Annotation is actually very useful, and it does serve a purpose, but you want to make sure that you're going to have that purpose. I should say that, all right? Especially for printed purposes. So, however, when you move into more of these newer technologies, there's other ways to go and manage this. One of the problems with the annotation is that Esri has changed the structure of the annotation so that ArcMap annotation is readable by ArcGIS Pro, but you can't edit it because there's 2 additional annotation fields built into the ArcGIS Pro anno that are not in the ArcMap. So in order to edit annotation ArcGIS Pro, you have to upgrade it. It adds those 2 fields, and they then are no longer readable by ArcMap. So if you're trying to do something between 2 technologies, it's problematic. Secondly, serving out annotation on portal and a web service, it's good for viewing. However, when you go to edit it, and these are technical terms here, it's very chatty with the server. So selecting it then has to go back to the server, figure out which one it is, and then it comes back and goes to you. So serving annotation on a web service, almost every user says it's so slow, I can barely even use it. So many of my clients have looked towards alternatives because they know they're not going to go and abandon this information on here, especially as some of it is more cartographic than it is related to the data. So what we've done is we've taken their annotation, converted it to points, and then display using labeling functions against the points to go and do this. And I've got these points right now are symbolized so that you can see where the points are. But again, normally with publication and with even printing, you would make it so you can't see the symbols on here. But you can set it up so that it looks exactly the same, but it uses a different technology than the annotation. You know, the annotation we've had since I started mapping 40 years ago with AutoCAD and things like that. It was pieces of text that we were putting on our map. So again, I'm not bad mouthing. I'm just saying that let's look at using some newer technologies for those sometimes. All right. So yeah, these are nothing more. If I go in and look at this property here, this is in fact a point feature class. That's all it is. And this actual database has a series of points one for each of the anno classes. When you transition into labels, you then have a lot more flexibility as far as you don't have to have different sets of labels for different scales. You can control that through the labeling engine more than anything else. You also then have the capability of doing things such as, if I go here, let's go and start editing this for a minute. And let's go to create a new parcel dimension, maybe. All right, I could set it up so that as I click here, it actually will go and using Arcade, and he's got this set at real small, using Arcade, it actually will go and do an intersect against the closest line, pull the COGO values out and the conditions I want that it's entered or computed, and then store that value on the point and then label that. So you kind of can achieve the same thing without having that piece of anno in there. You can determine where it's going to go, what the angle is going to be. You can determine all of that. It doesn't have to be that piece of anno. It can be, there's options. So I'm
Frank, and I appreciate showing this and the idea of a points layer is great on this is everything I've heard from courses and ESRIs, sort of official positions and stuff, you know, you're echoing. My question continues to be, how do I get the millions of anno that I have in 9 counties forward, right? In a one-time only deal. Like it's just too heavy a lift. And so I'm looking for guidance on how do we make the best of a bad situation, a suboptimal situation.
Converting your anno, Tom, converting your annotation to either lines or points with any number of tools is really pretty simple.
It's right there, right here. There's the tool. It's the feature to point tool, which goes and takes your annotation, converts it to a point, retains all the attribution from your anno, and you can then use that for your labeling.
So the orientation, how does that magically end up being retained?
There's an angle attribute on all of this. Go here. So in this case, again, here's all the annotation on here, but there's 2 that are critical. One is called the text string. That's where the actual characters that are going to be doing. And then there's an angle field. That angle field actually contains the rotation of your label.
And
Frank,
orientation, like direction of text.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's
Frank,
all in there.
Have you tested out because and for a lot of years?
Go ahead. You broke up there a little bit. Can you repeat that? Oh, I don't know if it's my side or your side.